Welcome back to the coverage of the Australian bushfire emergency here at We Are Change Melbourne. We have a show full of information today. Our guest Robert Deutsch is here to provide further analysis on the crisis that many are suffering here in Australia. So let's go to that interview now. A shocking start to the new year. What's your take on the disaster happening here in Australia?
Lack of a better word, I think it's horrendous that not only that the fires have gone on that long, but that the evidence is pointing to that it's a man-made and controlled event with the agendas of our oppressors being well served up on a plate at the cost of half a billion, or maybe even up to $1 billion now animals lost, not to mention the entities of the trees, how many of those have been lost, that they've gone uncounted, to the loss of homes, life, happiness, people's dreams. They dreamed of having a house in a good community with friends, and all those are getting split up now. And these poor firefighting people that are not getting paid, working themselves to the point of exhaustion and breathing these toxic air. It's just, it's horrendous. It's horrendous.
It sure is. And the immediate disaster of the flames, the catastrophic emergency situations, people's homes are just burnt to the ground, many lives lost, not to mention the smoke inhalation. The lasting effects of this fire is going to wreak havoc on people's health and well-being as well, isn't it, Robert?
Well, as you burn these metals that have been sprayed over this planet, the aluminum, barium, strontium, and they oxidize as well in the atmosphere. As Max Egan put it, it's sparkler dust, and we're seeing how these fires are burning, and even reports from the firefighters themselves. It's unlike anything they've ever seen. Even those ping pong balls, like catalysts inside of them that start fires, and people are seeing and reporting self-actuating fireballs. And that's exactly what these things are, and I've posted some videos on that to try to show how many agendas are being served here. It's not just the smart cities and the rail. Got a lot of resources under them for us that, laws of environmental laws have protected these areas to become pristine for the heritage of the future, to be able to have a natural forest with beautiful animals in them. As you burn them out, they're not there to be protected. The new zoning says, yeah, go ahead. We need jobs now around here, so make your mind. Plant your forest of pine trees and not even going to feed the animals, just to make board feet out of for people's homes and businesses, and burn people all the way to the coastline. These poor folks having to actually go into the water like a volcano had erupted, and they had nowhere else to go. And you got shark infested waters there. It's not a safe thing for people to have to go into the water for this.
100%. That's a very good point you raised. Now, it's remarkable. A lot of people have done their research on this. They've noticed certain anomalies with the chemical trails being sprayed. They've managed to put two and two together. They know that this is the direct cause of the rapid spread of the fire, but there is still some that they're either in denial or they're a bit slow to come up to pace on this. What would you say to someone that doesn't believe that chemtrails are the reason for the rapid inferno, and they deny this and say that it's not an engineered event?
To them, whether you believe it or not, it's doing it anyhow. You can not believe that you walk underneath a waterfall, that the water's going to hurt you, but if you do it, you're going to find out. And I've shown the plumes of for lack of a better term, of the chemical catalyst being put over the top of these fire areas before super ignition happens. Before this rapid, oh my God, sudden everything is burning around you. And again, you're trapping animals in a circle. They can't get out. The horrific images I've seen of the extinction of species going on last month. It's been going on about 4 months now. They hit Queensland and they calmed down over there. They went into the border area. Then they shut down around Sydney, like the Newcastle fire area, for instance. It's definitely been going on for about 4 months. It's not just something that's happened, but when the people are forced out in the water, the news had a horrific thing to show, and that's ratings. Sells a lot of pizza to the pizza delivery people, to this many people served by this. Because if you know something evil and you're sitting at the table, you're going to make sure you get your slice, and they make sure you get your slice. So you don't talk about it, you don't tell. And the chemtrail program is real. It's stated in the Paris Accords. You can go look at the United Nations document saying they're going to do this to you, saying what they're going to deploy. It's right there. I would tell them, go look, do your research. Don't believe me. Don't believe Jeff. Go look into this yourself. It's not only real. I've been fighting this for a very long time, but this is the worst case scenario. Yeah, you got the toxic air, and somebody compared it to the air in the city was equivalent to smoking 37 cigarettes a day, just breathing the air. Well, don't they have these new asthma vaccines to sell you? Isn't this big business? Isn't depopulation clearly stated as a goal of sustainable development? They say there's not enough space on this planet, which is bold-faced lie. You could fit everybody in the state of Alaska with a lot of land around. I mean, like just one spot. If everybody on the planet had to go to one spot, there's room in one state in the United States for everybody in the world. So you ain't gonna tell me that all they want is to be able to have areas where no-go zones. They could rape Mother Earth, pillage and plunder all the resources. Lithium is another big thing. There's a lot of lithium deposits in Australia. Did a podcast with Adam Crabb yesterday from Crabb's Files, and I showed him a document about resources. And I'll pop you a link to this so you can get it out there, where it says you're the third leading resource supply of lithium on the planet, and you're the number one exporter on the planet of lithium. So that's clearly spelled out in the electric agenda that's out there for sustainable development to get you away from the fossil fuels, which is a lie as well. It's not dinosaur driven, so you're burning in your car. And this is a self-perpetuating system, and oil is constantly being created. Water is constantly being created in the earth. There's no shortage of that either. They're just choosing not to because they can make a lot of money. There's money at stake. If you could put a meter on something that we use, but you tell people there's an unlimited supply, you can't charge as much. You can't tax it as high. So yeah, there's a lot hidden from us, Jeff. There just isn't. It's in plain sight. The plume comes over, boom. You look on Flight Tracker 24 and you see the white jets flying the grids right as fire start. And they're starting like regularly spaced. You can't tell me an ember blew 10 miles, then 10 miles, and 10 miles, and nothing in between. They know they're going to burn toward each other and make these super inferno fires, like when the Victoria one merges up to the one in the Blue Mountains, which is going to happen today or tomorrow.
Very well said. There's a wealth of information out there, and there's so much that doesn't add up. Like you said, the Blue Mountains, the cliff faces are burning, as well as the soil, and the fire is remaining longer than what it usually would. There's a perfect set of ingredients for this to be caused. Water deprivation, drought-like conditions, as well as the chemical trails being sprayed. People have to do their own research, and then they'll come to that conclusion. But it must be sheer ignorance or the fact that they don't want to believe their government would do this. But as you said, the records are out there. There's information at people's fingertips. And they've even got the capability to create rain like they've done in Vietnam. They can cloud seed and put these fires out. They have that technology.
Operation Popeye, isn't that one when they flooded up the Ho Chi Minh Trail so the supplies lines would be cut off from the Viet Cong, clearly spelled out. And that's from the 1960s. And that's been a long time ago. Oh my God, I'm getting old. That's 50 years ago. You know, technology has advanced exponentially since then. It's very secretive. It's not just a plane coming along, leaving a chemical trail behind it, or the persistent contract, whatever political dump down, words we're supposed to use so that we don't say what's on our mind. You got balloons up in the high atmosphere with big gondolas just puffing out stuff. You've got planes that could come by, an artillery method, if you will, shooting off flares of that. The smoke is a catalyst. We watch fireworks, so we see the colors in the sky from fireworks. The colors you see in the sky are refracted light here, because unless they're burned, you're not going to see that. But we know that flares can give off certain chemicals into the atmosphere. So that's fact. And they showed these planes that they call it cloud seeding to make it sound harmless. When you think seeding, that was taking an existing cloud is what it used to be, but the silver iodine in it and nucleating condensates big enough to make it rain. Well, now they're making clouds. They're moving clouds. They can control high pressure and low pressure, heat. is high pressure. Cool is low pressure, right? High pressure flows toward low pressure. So even the waveforms themselves that you see that look like stripes in the sky will create these drafts in between them, high, low, because you've cooled an area with a shadow. You have a hotter area because of the sun. And it's well easy to aim and control. I just showed a video where there's a beam hitting the dead center of the cyclone that's about to impact Western Australia. That's creating a heated flow that's going to push this along. I put a heated flow to the side. It's like putting a wall with your hand. Things are not going to get past it because the rush of wind is clearly going to steer it.
Very good
And the
analysis.
chemical is just, there's no other way that I can explain it in a simple way. I can go into all sorts of things that these chemical lines can do. We're well aware of flashing blue screen light, mesmerism, that's spelled out. It's very well spelled out, MK Ultra programs and stuff like that. We get this off of our blue screens in our hand. Well, as they took the yellow wavelength away from the sun, so all we see is blue, even the shadows themselves rippling along are going to cause this to us as well. It's going to be flashing lights that are picked up subliminally in our minds. Now, as they're going to get everybody into these 5G cities, because it's quite evident that's where they're relocating people now. You know, they've burned you all out. You ain't going to have the insurance money to rebuild your house to the code that's now expected. Your house might have been worth a half, let's say a rich person out there, $400,000 nice house up in the mountains that you have. That's a low price range for one up there. And now they burned you out. You've had a fire come through and it wiped your house. No longer can you defend your house, which was a brilliant strategy you used to have. So they say, here's your 400,000, let's say. But the code now requires 600,000's worth of the special insulations that you have to be so green, so to speak. Where's your electrical panels? Where is your sustainable? Maybe they'll require even windmills in people's yards that they can plug into the grid so you'll generate power for the system to use. You know, that they're going to tax you on as well. That's another whole scam about that. They tax you on that. You'll have to have the lithium battery banks to store the power to use at night. So I say, you may get an insurance payout, but are you going to be able to rebuild back what you had? You know, this as they clamp down even on laws of, maybe you want to say, fine, I'm just going to buy a caravan and I'm just going to travel the rest of my retirement years and enjoy my retirement, seeing the beauty of Australia. But they say, no, you can't do that anymore because they want to track and control your every movement. They're locking you down in these cities, 5G, and so that you can't. Everything is tracked. Your refrigerator is going to know what's in it. They might send you, say, hey, you got kids. Your 5G's telling us from your refrigerator that you're not having the following state nutrients. You know, using the mandatory health laws that are coming in, draconian measures, whatever people want to call them. All I know is they're going to know what's in your fridge. A package might arrive at your house. Here's the right vegetables. Here's the GMO, this and that. You have to feed your child this, or else we're going to take your kid away from you. You know, you won't even have that choice, or even for yourself. You're not consuming the predicted state product. If you can't predict the sale, you can't get the loan from the IMF or the low rating of your currency, which your currency is at. Oh, it's horrendous how little you get anymore in Australia for your money. It is one of the worst. Where I'm at now, the currency it's nearly 6 lira for $1 US. When I first came here to Turkey for the first time a couple of years ago, it was 4.2. And so that's a huge difference. It is. You know, that might be great for me and all because I could spend and you could nearly live like a king off an Australian dollar. You go out to dinner here, you're 4-to-1 on Australian dollar to the lira. So they use this leverage. They use this. Of course, the government's like, hey, you got all the business people saying it's costing me too much to buy what I need, exporting and stuff. I'm not getting enough. Your jobs are going away. Of course, there's the slave labor countries that are ready and available to supply these products. Come in and buy large tracts of land. I don't like to villainize, a whole country for the cunts that are in charge of things, because the people I find everywhere across the world, we all want a better life for our children than we had. We all want to just be left alone to live our lives. We don't want to have somebody they're snooping our every freaking move, but that's common.
That's right. There's many issues that we're plagued with the control systems put in place, the radiation frequencies through 5G. It plays right into their hands, the government's agenda, and they're blaming it on climate change so they can implement a lot of these methods, the smart cities. They're using all these excuses on the public to divert people away from the real cause of the fires, which is the flammable chemicals being sprayed. So people are really disillusioned to what's going on.
And it is so horrendous. You don't want to believe something like that, that the people who you put in charge to know what's best for you are doing what's best for themselves, for their own bank accounts. How many times do you see a high-ranking government official that leaves government then turn up in the board of directors of a major corporation? I dare say your prime minister has shot himself in the foot so tight he's going to have to step down soon. But I'll be wondering, what's he going to do? Is he going to become the head of that big church? What is he going to do? He's going to get a very cushy job. He is, where he can still sit back and drink his beer and watch his cricket while Rome burns. They said that Nero fiddled while this guy was off in Hawaii at a luau. He was at a cookout while the cookout was Australia. And it's beyond wrong. That's his lack of empathy toward people, even his attitude. Oh, the fireys want to be there. Bullshit. They want to be with their families. They wanted to have Christmas with their families and New Year's with their families. And now all their bills are going to hell. They're going to be under incredible strife. Oh, they deserve a stipend for their time spent. At least a minimum wage. And a minimum wage even for these heroes. There's no better word for it. When people spoke out and snubbed your prime minister, here come the strong-armed thugs kicking people off, saying the land and when they're gatherings, calling them illegal gatherings, and then under the pretext of we need to backburn. Where was this backburning for the last 3 years that you needed to prevent all this firewood on the forest floor? And this firewood that's getting rained down upon, these chemicals that I've been showing y'all for years and years. It was like it living in the inside of a firecracker that had been opened up and laid down on the forest floor. And it is just so wrong. It just is. I could swear my head off out of it. At the end of the day, the one word for it is wrong. It's wrong that it's been done. It's wrong. And we've allowed it. We bought those excuses off the television, climate strike crap. When the climate is being changed, it is not changing. You can't show me that CO2 is even a greenhouse gas that's going to raise temperature. Any physicist will tell you it don't. The CO2 feeds the trees, feeds the fauna. They eat this stuff. Take their sunlight away and their CO2 away, there goes the forest. You won't be able to feed yourself. You'll have the factory farms filled with God only knows what hydroponic mix that's going into this stuff that we eat. What kind of fibers would be going into these foods that we've seen, causing 100%. The Morgellons or the DNA type strands of fibers people seeing coming out their body.
They created these conditions and then they ignited this inferno. And what we're seeing now with the bushfire bulletins, they're doing Masonic hand signals to give a shout out to the handlers that they're right on track and they're following this agenda. There's coded symbols that we're seeing here as well. So it's very sinister and it's all done by design.
It is. It's so that they can see their handiwork and laugh it up. Well, we see these symbols all the time in the backgrounds of the major Hollywood movies and various other things. Why is this symbol keep reappearing?
That's exactly what it was, yes.
It's, why? I know when I took speech class, they did tell us if you have problems with hand movements to hold your hands this way. It's actually taught in the universities. But I never, at the time I was at the university, I wasn't as awake as I am now, so I never associated. It's hard that every symbol is being villainized too. So it's the people that communicate with their hands by gesticulating. I'd almost tape my own hands down. I use the OK symbol, but evidently now that's white supremacy, 666, and this and that. And it can't take everything away, or even the deaf person ain't going to be able to use his sign language anymore. But I do clearly see that. I dare say, when you look at this being done in the Church of Jesus with the miracle, and if you put that out like that, that's a Masonic handshake.
Yes.
You see it on a lot of the statuary around the planet.
It's all very much premeditated, and they're complicit in the murder of many Australians and the wildlife here. Now, do you believe the pilots are complicit in this, or they're just following instructions?
The ones that are on the jet planes, I've looked in many a cockpit. I've never seen a chemtrail on off, because your fuel mix and your additives for your fuel are controlled by computer. As you go through certain altitudes, the computer determines what's the most efficient fuel mix. So I have to say, no, there's no pilot going on off. They definitely know about it, but they're probably gagged. They want to lose their job. More concerned about their paycheck than the people that they're flying over. But they're flying through this stuff too. They're breathing it too. And maybe they don't have access to the hidden tech health stuff that our oppressors have. You know, and I feel bad for them for that. Because the cabin air is toxic. These poor cabin crew, they're breathing this to a point where they're going to end their lives very quickly. Cancers is going to be very hot. They might blame a gamma ray, and I go, how about that perithrin you've been spraying for bugs inside the cabin? I fly with masks on. I have a little kit when I fly. It's got a very good particulate mask, one I used to use when I spray painted. And I wear it, especially during takeoff and descent. I filmed many takeoffs and landings where I'm going through the mix, explaining the different levels of the atmosphere, how, like one of those thermometer things or when you put liquids in a drink and you can separate the layers. You know, the different specific gravity viscosities of liquids can separate. And it happens naturally in the atmosphere. I can create currents where I can cause these things to meet and catalyze things. And this tech is well known. Operation Popeye has had its spinach now, and it's doing its bit.
That's
I
right.
try to use sarcasm.
The tanks and the nozzles.
Yeah, well, I filmed tanks and nozzles. I filmed nozzles on planes. You know, we're going into Sydney and stuff, and then I had one of the mechanics that worked on the plane said, I will look at this exact plane, tell me your flight. And he went and took a picture of the exact plane that had nozzles. Then he sent me a schematic. And I'm not going to bust his balls by letting him know which airline it is. And then I asked him, I said, well, this pipe is supposed to equalize air pressure in this one area of the wing. I said, have you taken apart every one of them? And can you tell me honestly that you know every pipe where it's going? Or do you work on a specific part of the plane? Has this plane gone somewhere and been retrofitted? No. One of them said to me on the ones on the ends that that's for letting fuel out. And I go, wait a minute. Fuel's got toxic cancer warnings on it. And that's technically a chemical. And if you're letting it go out, that is a chemtrail. You can't tell me any different by pure definition. Even simple logic will tell us this. Now, I've never been lucky enough, or unlucky enough, as the case would be, to see that actually happen. I've flown over 250,000 miles doing this. People go, how can you do that while they're fighting chemtrails? I said, the plane was going to do it anyhow. And I think it's more important I get out and talk to people. You know, get off this social media. Stand in front of folks and talk to them. Stand on street corners where there's a lot of people waiting on buses or to cross and just point a camera up and start speaking. You know, this is a way we can get our word out without getting in trouble too much. As long as I don't swear it up, I can explain it. It always starts a conversation. Always, always, always. Never had a time I did that where one person didn't go, what are you talking about? Because people are nosy. When you're filming something, they're going to stop. They're going to listen. They're going to watch it. So it's something I do a lot. It's just to find a way. Another thing we can do, we're allowed to cross crosswalks. So two people carrying a banner legally hitting the crosswalk sign when during heavy traffic times walking across the road. We're allowed to do that, and we're allowed to do it repeatedly. There's no limit on how many times you hit that button across that road. Right. In fact, I think they like people to stop their cars because it uses more fuel, don't it? Because they have to restart. I know a lot of the new cars now, they cut off when things go wrong, but then their car might not start afterwards because the starters are going to burn up quicker. That's big money for the magnet making company. And
yes,
this interlying web of it turns into a toxic cloth almost. That's how fine the spider web is now.
Exactly, and what we're seeing with the television programming, they're putting chemtrails in a lot of commercials, movies, and television programs to normalize it, like it's natural that this should be occurring. So people get it into their conscious levels that, oh yes, that's normal, when clearly it's not. It's poison.
Show me a film from 1939 in, let's say, old Western, the colorized, digitized, remastered movies, and you see chemtrails in it. And then a second later, the same scene, you'll see an EMF sky. Same scene. They might miss something, and you'll see the clear blue from the original. That was added, folks. The first jet plane flight of a commercial airline was in 1953. It was from London into Africa. It might have been Johannesburg. But that was the first time. You see one before then? No. Sorry, it just didn't happen. In the war, you'll see a lot of trails sometimes, but that was because of the carbureted mixes used. Often when they did loops and things like that, oil actually went into their fuel mix. Like you've seen the dog fights.
Sure.
So again, and of course they have smoke screen programs. We get the big smoke screen program. I think they call it the television. It's just so horrendous, Jeff. Everything, the whole dumb downing of it all. Everybody go, oh, it's a Mandela effect. No, they edited things and reprinted it. Spielberg and was out there, and Lucas was re-edited. We want to preserve these old films, but they added things. It's well known that the chemtrails are added to the Railroad Children. Everybody touts that one. But I go back and I watch old movies. I was watching Heidi, old movie. This is when it was colorized. They added chemtrails to it. I said, come on, people, use your brain. But how can you use the brain you were never taught to use? In school, they teach you to repeat what they call a fact. You open up the book, you repeat what the teacher said, you get your grade. But they don't teach you critical thinking. I'm surprised they even teach math anymore. Because otherwise, if they teach you 1 + 1 = 3, and if you say no, it isn't 1 and 1, that's 2, you're wrong. You go home, you get the bad grade and the punishments that go along. I know about you. I brought a bad report card home. My freedoms were seriously restricted by my parents. My ability to sit down might be impaired. So there's all this. Everybody wins, nobody loses. So that's going to sell a lot of depression drugs and increase the suicide rate dramatically as the millennials go out to work. If they ever do, if they ever leave the basement,
There's a flow-on effect that is very devastating, and people are impaired enough looking at their smartphones. They're not looking up at the sky. They're not seeing the crisscross patterns with chemtrails. They're just completely oblivious to the destruction that's happening around them. So it's even more difficult trying to explain some of the hazardous effects from these trails when they're off in their own world, in their own reality, and they're not switched on. It's like they put up a wall, a barrier in front of them, and to try and penetrate that and get the information through, they're just closed off.
Generation has all these new cloud types. One of them says man-made cloud in Latin. How are they teaching Latin anymore? A lot of these children have never seen a sky that was natural. I often think back and wonder if I ever seen a natural cloud. As my research went on, and I seen this was going on even when I was growing up. Just not as in our face as it was. I don't see the puffy clouds anymore. Even the cumulus clouds have squared edges on them. They're not round. They're not dissipating within the 10 minutes that they're, well, I was taught that's how long they last. 15-minute max on a regular cumulus cloud. It's just a condition. It formed a cloud, and the wind moved it away from that condition, and it dissipated. Now, not all day long, and you'll see hundreds of them, and you use your imagination enough where you'll see that all of them, well, not even imagination, critically think about it. You'll see that they're all in grids. They all have a square edge on them. And to fly above them, you'll see the plumes are in tubes. They're not even big round. I've seen it all over. I do when I'm flying. I look out the window and do a lot of thinking. I think about the conditions. How have they made this? What could possibly have done this? And I tell you, clearly it's geoengineering.
Absolutely.
I'm a nightmare to sit next to on a plane. I scare the shit out of people, which is kind of a bonus because then I end up with all 3 seats to myself.
good on you for taking the initiative and waking people up that are really not aware of the devastation being caused. And, you know, people have taken soil samples, they've looked at the flammable ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
The evidence is there. As they say, the proof is in the pudding. So,
And another thing is aluminum, as we know it, aluminium, whichever country and how you pronounce it, is not found without processing it. It doesn't exist free, as in a free state of chemical on this planet. You must refine it from something else. So you're not just going to find a rock in the ground called aluminum like you would find a rock that's called gold. It has to be processed. So for this stuff to get in the atmosphere and to end up back on the soil, it had to have been done by man. There's no other way it's done. No other way.
excellent point you raised there. So if anyone tries to say that that's a natural occurrence, they'd be dead wrong.
Yeah, it's impossible. It doesn't exist freely.
Yeah.
So a lot of these heavier metals can only be made through process. You're going to find a barium crystal. Let's think about these things, folks. Would they spray toxic waste on us? What's cheaper, to sell it and spray it on you, or deploy it? If people are shut down because of the word spray, fine. Deploy it to have a payload because they get paid for the load to deploy it on us. Is it cheaper to do that, or is it cheaper to pay a company to take it to a hazardous waste incinerator and dispose of it according to the law?
Yeah.
Coal ash, is it cheaper to make a flood and have the dam of this toxic coal ash byproduct flood out and break and go over the property, or is it going to cost you a lot more to get it incinerated? You know, the corporate bottom lines throughout history have not considered human health or animal health in their decisions. And for the board of directors, only cares about that investment. They've invested in that company. They expect a certain return. And while it's time that we return to moralistic values, I think it just is. There's so many agendas being served up at this oppressor's table these days. And it's toxic soup for us.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's happening all around us, and we need to take action now. They're going to use Australia as a prime example and say, look, we have to take precautions because of climate change. Look what happened to Australia. And buy into the propaganda. And it's sad to see your fellow countrymen and women being brainwashed by a criminal government.
And if y'all's governance people had paid for the Paris Accord money, would this have happened to y'all anyhow? I think so. Because it's the big picture. They got aluminum resistant tree. Let's just go there. There's all sorts of products served up by, used to be Monsanto, now it's the Bayer Corporation. Bayer, right? Weren't they involved in the death camps?
Yeah.
Let's think about this. You got the company that makes the toxic stuff, the food, or anti-toxic trees to plant, and you'll get those trees planted back, drought resistant, this resistant. You know what? We need to resist the resistancenesses. It's just, it is a horrendousness, Jeff. It just is. I could rant on forever. You've seen my live videos. I'm actually being really clean. Maybe it's because I took a shower. I don't know.
And what we're seeing in California is direct energy weapons being used. And, you know, that's quite alarming in itself. Advanced technology used against the people.
You ain't going to see the laser beam, but you will see the result of it. You will see what it has done. And I clearly see evidence of directed energy weapons in these fires. But somebody say, look at this laser beam. I'm going to laugh. It's an invisible wavelength of light, folks. The military is not going to design a laser beam that you can hone in on and go right to the target source, the source of the beam. It's invisible. However, knowing that laser beams can induce electric potential and actually lightning can be directed with it, that those documents are well out there. Look into laser-induced lightning. You'll see what I'm talking about. We know that tornadoes are an electrical phenomenon, and the wind is an after effect of it, if you will, of that. So when I see a fire NATO leaning on its side, I'm saying as a laser has come in and induced the electrical potential to make that fire NATO happen. I can clearly say that, and that's factual. And when I know how microwaves And a laser beam is a microwave, a spectrum of light that is a microwave. A femtosecond laser, look into it, that's the exact name of it. If it's melting the engine blocks of cars, but yet the little tyke's house of your kid in the backyard ain't even melted, come on, people, use your head. The plastic didn't melt, but your engine block did. These are visible signs that directed energy weapons were deployed on these Australian fires. Not to mention the catalyzing ping pong balls, and I've seen pictures of people showing these deployments of what they've done. You ain't telling me this is a hot spot of a fire here, 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 and here, when a helicopter just went by. You could deploy these off the helicopters. Are the helicopters themselves fanning the flames?
Yeah.
Locally. I think about the big picture, because a lot of plausible deniability here. Because it is. And it's so horrendous you wouldn't want to believe that they do this. It's bad enough they do stuff to the humans, but taking out the animals of Australia, which the whole world treasures, they do. When you ask people, what do you want to see in Australia? They'll say they want to see a kangaroo. They want to see a koala bear. They love to see a platypus. Nobody says I just want to see Ayers Rock. They might want to see that. They want to see the animals. Why? Because Steve Irwin showed us the beauty of Australia's animals.
Yeah.
And here they are gone. And when the big rains hit Queensland, the runoff of these rivers carrying the toxins from these fires, the transmuted metals, because the flames will transmute them into other harsher substances, I was going to wash out on that reef. And if the reef is gone, that's probably the oldest living organism on this planet, gone within a century of human non-intervention, not stopping, because of our oppressors' greed. And
it's heartbreaking to see the mass genocide of people, and the culprit is the sinister government. They're pulling the strings, and it ties right into Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, depopulation. We're seeing, mankind being slaughtered, and the animals as well. It's absolutely shocking. It's beyond anyone's wildest belief, that